packed house. Welcome, everybody. Glad you're here. We're excited tonight to get to hear from Tim and Lisa Mack. So I want to say a prayer and turn it over to them, give them a chance to hear their story as we talk together and hear from our shepherds, their spiritual journeys. So we're very blessed. Many of us know and love Tim and Lisa, and if you don't, you know the Mack family. That means something in these parts, and so I've come to know in a deep way, in a special way. So we're excited to get to hear from them. Let me open us in a word of prayer, and then we'll get started. Father, what a wonderful thing it is to gather in this place at this time, together as family, to listen to the story of Tim and Lisa. Father, and even greater than that, your story in the midst of their story. Father, thank you for the ways that you have been at work in and through them. Thank you for the way that you've continued to call them closer to you and their hearts that have been so open and tender and ready to follow. Father, you've challenged them, you've encouraged them, and through that, you have encouraged and loved so many of us. And so we just want to say thank you for Tim and Lisa. Thank you for their love. Thank you for your life in the midst of their life. And we enjoy and look forward to hearing about that story tonight. Lord, would you prepare our hearts and our minds, our ears, to receive a word from you. And so, God, we ask this blessing and thank you for this opportunity. In Jesus' name, amen.
Good evening, everybody. Everybody can hear me okay? I think Lisa and I both, last time I got up in church, everybody was laughing. And I didn't know why. And so if y'all laugh at me tonight, just let me know why you're laughing, okay? Lisa and I have both, we're just going to read, for the most part, our testimonies. And every now and then we may stop and pause if something pops in our mind. But for the most part, we're just going to read tonight. And so I'm gonna start. I'll start from the beginning. I was born. I was born into a life of privilege. Let me explain what I mean by privilege. My parents were lifelong Christians, as were their parents. And to the best of my ability, all of them were Campbellites. If you don't know what a Campbellite is, you can ask your neighbor. I was surrounded by godly, faithful, and devoted parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, siblings, cousins, and friends from the very day of my birth. I was taught the Bible at home by my parents. They consistently modeled Christ-like behavior and still do today. I come from a large family on my mother's side. There were 16 cousins in all, and 14 of us were boys. We were together often. I grew up on the family farm, and it was awesome. One set of my cousins lived across the yard from us. Many of you are familiar with those two houses. There is no better place for a boy to grow up than on a farm. I learned about hard work, a fair wage for a job well done. I'm not sure Dad always paid us a fair wage. That's why I know what that is. I think my first job, was a quarter an hour, but I'm not sure. But I learned about a fair wage for a job well done. I learned about animals and tractors and fire and swimming in the irrigation ditch. I learned that life isn't always fair. Sometimes it rains and sometimes it doesn't. I've learned since then that Mom and Dad didn't have much money at the time, but I had no clue about that. We had groceries on the table. One of my fondest memories of my childhood was when, during the summers, all the boys would leave the house in the morning and go with Dad to work. We were usually hoeing cotton. And Mom and my sister would cook a hot meal for lunch. And we would all come in from the field all summer with the table set, the dining room table set, with a hot meal to eat for lunch. And I know Mom worked real hard on that, and that's a great memory for me. I was happy. I had a great upbringing in this very church. I guess I've spent as much time in this building as I have in almost any other place. I often hear of people criticizing the things that were taught in the Church of Christ during the 60s and 70s. That wasn't my experience, however. I was taught to love all people. I was taught forgiveness and grace. What a great cloud of witnesses we have here. Of course, Joe Barnett and Ken Dye were the preachers that I grew up on. But some of my teachers in Bible class were Mrs. Justice and Mrs. Chance, Martha Carter, Mrs. Crumpler, and others. My mom taught at Sunshine School for many, many years. Most of you know my dad as a very good adult Bible teacher, but when I was in 5th and 6th grade, he taught the 5th and 6th grade. Dad served as an elder here for a long, long time. David and Judy Bridges taught 5th and 6th grade on Wednesday nights. And for those of you who have been here a long time, it was in a house right there across the street that's now been torn down. They taught the book of Acts. It was very memorable for me. And Timothy Club was a huge memory and impact for me. I was a little guy. I preached a sermon on Philip. I think it was 37 seconds long. But it seems like we had hundreds of boys at Timothy Club in those days. My count may be wrong, but it seemed like there were hundreds of us. I attended Lubbock Christian School from kindergarten through 12th grade, so I was taught the Bible every day. I attended chapel every day. So when I say I had a life of privilege, that was not a financial one. I had a privileged spiritual life. I was baptized on December 3rd of 1980 when I was 13 years old. My primary motive for being baptized was fear. Earlier that year, John Bridges, the son of those two teachers I just referred to, and who was a teenager here at the time, died suddenly. That event awakened in me a reality that life is fragile and uncertain. And although Broadway had done a good job of teaching me about grace, there was no shortage of teaching on judgment and heaven and hell as well. I don't regret being motivated by fear. I want to think that my faith has matured beyond fear. But fear can sometimes be a useful motivator, and so it was for me. I became somewhat involved in the youth group once I entered junior high. But because I had such a strong Christian family and a strong Christian environment at school, it wasn't as significant for me as it was for others. You're going to find out here in a minute. School was always easy for me. I made good grades. I've always been blessed to have friends. I saw that. I've always been blessed to have friends who were not interested in trouble. I was generally a good kid who stayed out of trouble. I made good grades and I obeyed the rules. I've always loved sports, especially basketball. I played high school basketball for Lubbock Christian, which is, of course, a very small school. I guess I was decent at it, probably not as good as I thought I was at the time. But basketball was pretty much my highest priority from 7th through 12th grade. I was a late bloomer, and as my mother especially can attest, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade was a period of extreme despair for me. But ironically, I later developed a very deep self-confidence. This self-confidence served me well in many pursuits, in school, in sports, and in work. But it also sowed seeds that would later germinate into some things more nefarious. Your turn.
My turn. Yeah. Well, hi. I'm going to read too. So, my story starts right here too. I was born to James and Pat Hall a long time ago. I've decided to say it. We attended Broadway. But I don't think we were consistent. I'm not sure, but I don't have a lot of really vivid memories of being a child and coming to church. Now, I've talked to lots of people, even in this room, who can tell me memories of my childhood and stuff that are different than what I remember or clearer than what I remember. So I'm telling you now, some of my memories may be a little bit flawed, but this is the best I can remember. But I don't think we attended very regularly, even though we were members here. I know at some point my parents were involved in the class that's now the Anchors Bible class. So it's kind of that generation, maybe a little older than some of those people, but in that group. So I think that's right. So anyway, my daddy died when I was 7 years old. I remember vividly coming to his funeral here at Broadway. My mom was 37 years old, and she was a single mom to 3 kids, two boys, 13 and 10, and me at 7. It was a very, very hard time for our family, and we didn't come to church. And as Tim and I were practicing our testimony, I didn't grow up in the same environment Tim did. Mine wasn't horrible, but it wasn't the spiritual place that yours was. I told y'all we were 13, 10, and 7, so my brothers and I fought a lot. My mom had her hands full, over full. She was trying to take care of my brothers and learn how to help out at the family business that my dad had founded and run until his death. So it was a difficult, hard time, and I remember being scared and afraid a lot. But the Lord provided an incredible blessing for me, and that, like almost to the day, 2 weeks after my dad died, we got new neighbors. The McNeils moved in next door, and they had a daughter that was a year older than me, and they were the neatest people. Come to find out, they were Christians, but I didn't realize that's what the difference was at the time. But I just kind of adopted them, and they didn't ask me to, but I chose to. And everything they did, I just tried to tag along. I'd go to their house. My mom worked now during the summer, so I would go over there every day, and I'd hang out with Lori and her mom. And they would go play tennis, and I would go over and say, hey, can I go too? And I never thought another thing of it. I mean, I just assumed they would want me around. But now that I've raised my own kids, I can't imagine. I mean, I was literally there all the time, and I wouldn't even knock on the door. I'd just walk in the front door. So I just really appreciate them, because they made a huge difference in my life, and they brought some stability to me and showed me the love of Christ when I didn't know that's what I needed, and I didn't know that the stability was what I lacked. I just knew that I was scared. So let's jump forward a few years. In 9th grade, my family still wasn't going to church. And I decided I wanted to go to church because all my friends went to church and the McNeils went to church, and we didn't go to church. But I wanted to come here to Broadway because I knew that's where my family had belonged. But I didn't have anybody to come with, and we didn't attend, so I didn't know what to do. So I was a tennis player at Evans Junior High, and I was playing tennis against a young lady that went to McKenzie Junior High, and her name was Holly Lanier. And I have no idea how I knew that Holly and her family came here to church, but I did. So I walked up to Holly on the tennis court, and I said, hey, if I came to Broadway this Sunday, would you sit by me? And she said yes. And I went home, and I begged my mom, and she took me to church that Sunday, and Holly did sit with me. She actually invited me to stay and go to Bible class. But my mom didn't want to stay and go to Bible class because she didn't really feel like she had a place to belong, because at that point, the classes, I believe, were all called like Couples 1, Couples 2, Couples 3. Well, my mom wasn't a couple, and she didn't have a place to go and felt funny. So Holly said, well, I really want you to stay. And I said, well, I'm so sorry, I can't. I don't have a way home. So Holly's parents came through, and they said that they would bring me home. Well, that started something. I loved being with the youth group, and I wanted to come every time I could. But that's a pretty big burden for one set of parents, for somebody that's not even your daughter. So I was very blessed in that I made some other friends. And Cindy Mulligan was older than me, and she could drive, and she would come and get me. And when she couldn't, her mom would come and get me. And I became friends with Mary Jane Potts, and Mr. and Mrs. Potts would come get me. And so all of those people would come and get me for a solid year so I could be at every youth group activity because I didn't have another way of coming. They taught me about Jesus. They taught me the Word of God, which I had never truly been exposed to. And I accepted Christ and was baptized on December 5th, 1982. Okay, so that was in December. Well, then came the summer, and they announced that they were going to have another trip called Summer Summit. Well, if it was a youth group trip, I went. I mean, that's all that mattered. And it was a trip to the mountains. I was so excited. So the leaders told us to come to the Youth Reach building the night before we were to leave, and we were going to pack our packs. I didn't know what that meant, but I was going to go. So I got all my cute clothes together, and I got my curling iron and all that stuff, and I brought it all up to the Youth Reach building. And I started unpacking my stuff, and Stu Childry walked over to me and just started shaking his head. And he told me, no, you're not taking all that stuff. You can have 2 pair of shorts and 2 t-shirts. We're going mountain climbing. And I still went, even though I wasn't prepared. But I did have hiking boots, so somebody must have told me that. Anyway, to make a long story short, I went on this trip, and I took my tennis shorts that I had brought, which were entirely too short for this kind of trip, and everybody was still nice to me about it. I jumped in the van, and away we went. Well, I got on this trip, and there was a really cute, tall, skinny boy on this trip named Tim Mack. And I don't remember exactly what happened, but I do remember on the way home, he held my hand in the van. And I had butterflies in my tummy. So I remember Tim coming to my 16th birthday party. He walked in and he had on a purple shirt that had little stripes on it. I just remember. And he gave me the cutest little stuffed dog that I loved so much, and I still have today. Well, after we got married, I came to find out that that stuffed dog was a reject that some girl had given his brother, and that Tim had found in a drawer of his house on the way to my 16th birthday party. But I still have that puppy. So I turned 16 and I got my driver's license, and I think the entire Broadway congregation sighed a huge sigh of relief because now I could drive myself to church. Shortly after that, Tim and I broke up right in the middle of the Broadway auditorium, right exactly where the youth group sits today. And I don't think it was very nice, but that's okay. The youth group here at Broadway was transformational in my life. I was introduced to Jesus Christ through this youth group and through all the people that showed me his love and took me to and fro for a whole year. I talked constantly. I was loud, and my hiking shorts were way too short. But people loved me. They showed me the love of Christ. I want to say thank you to all those people today, a lot of which are sitting in this room right now. I finally felt safe and secure, and I wasn't scared all the time. I went on retreats and mission trips, and we taught Sunday school on those mission trips, and I hadn't come to church as a child, so I got to learn those stories for the first time. Every bit of my growth and dependence on Jesus Christ was directly attributable to this church and to this youth group. Kent Rhodes was my youth minister, and he taught me so very much, and I just want to say thank you so much for the difference this church has made in my life.
So now you'll hear the
Oh, wait,
story.
that's not supposed to be yours.
Oh.
Oops. I'm sorry, I gave it to him too soon. I graduated from high school, and it was time to go to college. And my best friends, Mary Jane Potts and Tyson Huffstedler, were going to ACU. So I wanted to go to ACU, even though I didn't know what ACU was. I didn't know ACU where it was. I'd never been there, but that's where they were going, so that's where I thought I needed to go. I asked my mom, and after a lot of pleading and begging and praying, I was allowed to go. So I packed up the car, and we drove off and got to ACU and moved into my dorm room with Mary Jane. She was my roommate. So I got to ACU, and I'll never forget, one night during Welcome Week, I walked into the campus center to see if I had any mail. And I bumped right into Tim Mack again. And he was still cute. And he and I talked that night, and we flirted a little bit, and I was smitten. And it didn't take too long before he called me and asked me to go to a Tuesday night Devo on the ad building steps. We started dating, and we fell in love. And we got married after my sophomore year in college, which is entirely too young, I can say now. But at the time, I thought I was fully prepared and mature. So Tim and I got married, and he graduated from ACU, and we moved to Arlington, and I finished up my degree at UTA. Now it's your turn.
So y'all want to hear the real story about this trip to Colorado, or?
That was a real story.
No, that's pretty close. So, but I will repeat a little bit of it. It was the summer of 1983. For everybody to get that in context, I was 16. I guess she was 15-ish. I arrived at the building just like what she said. We were divided into these cooking groups, and I pretty much knew everybody. I don't know why I'm about to do that, but anyway. Except for this very happy, very talkative, very excited girl. I don't know where she came from. I don't think I had ever laid eyes on her. Her name was Lisa Hull. Did I mention she was drop dead gorgeous? She had this really great tan and these really beautiful long legs. But by the end of the trip, we were holding hands. That is true. We dated a few times and then we didn't. Then I left for college. And so 1 year later, I was home for the summer, and we were on the third floor in the college class, and I look up, and there she is again, in a white dress, still sporting that great tan. And as she said earlier, so too me, I've been smitten ever since. And so August 13th of 1988, right in there, we were married. And you were wearing a white dress that day too. Yeah. Different white dress. So I graduated from ACU in 1989. We moved to Arlington. Lisa finished her degree at UTA. Ever since then, I've either been a CPA or an investment advisor. Our son Tucker was born in 1992 and our daughter Kaylee in 1994. We had a fantastic church experience in Arlington at the North Davis Church of Christ. We continue to be blessed by those relationships. Some will say that church attendance is not important. I disagree. You need to be here. You have a part to play. Your presence is important. If not for you, for each other. We had community at North Davis, and we have it here at Broadway. It's one of the great blessings of our life. It was during this time that I began more in-depth Bible study. I began to teach Bible classes. I became a student of God's Word. I knew right from wrong. People would tell me I was a good teacher. My bosses would tell me I was good at my job. My wife thought I could do anything. I was my kid's hero. And I started to believe it. So we moved back to Lubbock in 1994 without a job. I don't know what we were thinking. We became members at Broadway again. We actually lived out at the farm again. And, excuse me. Okay.
See, you're my hero.
Okay, where was I? We moved back out to the farm. The kids were growing. Don Nichols, who's a member here at Broadway, gave me a job, much to the relief of probably my parents, who were wondering what in the world we were doing. We were healthy. I was teaching Bible classes here at church, and other than the illness and eventual death of Lisa's mom, life was really good. I had leadership roles here at church and at LCS, where our kids were going. I began to think I was a big shot. And I started acting like a big shot. Those seeds of self-confidence that I mentioned earlier had grown now into selfishness, arrogance, self-righteousness, and pride.
Living in Lubbock was such a blessing. We lived on the Mack farm north of town, right next door to Tim's parents. My kids were in heaven. They're still mad at me that we moved too, but anyway. They got to play outside carefree and footloose. They loved living next door to Papa and Grandma and getting to go to their house all the time. My mother lived in town, and we went to her house just about every day. I would stay at home. I was a stay-at-home mom, so when I needed to get out of my house, I would go to my mom's. She would keep the kids for me so I could run my errands and stuff. My kids were spoiled rotten and loving it. At this time, I began attending a Bible study called Bible Study Fellowship here in Lubbock. It's a non-denominational Bible study, and it's offered worldwide. And I ate it up. I loved the Lord, and I trusted Him, but I had never in my life fed on His Word like I learned to there. For 7 years I attended. I studied Scripture, and I dug into His Word like I never had. My faith grew by leaps and bounds. I was totally in love with the Lord and His Word. I was amazed and in awe at His goodness, and I still am. I am so thankful for the time of growth and maturity. I had some storms in my future, and I needed deep roots. 3 years after we moved to Lubbock, my mom got sick. I was 30 years old, and my mom was very sick with breast cancer. When we found it, it was very far along, and we knew for about 3 months, and then she died. It was a very difficult time for me and for our family. I was so very thankful that we had moved back to Lubbock, and I got to spend so much time with my mom. It was a huge blessing. I still miss my mom. No one loves you like your mom. Your mom loves you relentlessly. I am so thankful to be her daughter. I grew tremendously through my mom's illness and death, but it's a very, very painful memory. Let's fast forward 7 more years, and life is good. Tucker is in 7th grade, and KK is a 5th grader. We are blowing and going. Both kids attend Lubbock Christian School like their dad. They're on city sports teams. They play piano. They're in gymnastics. I'm the president of the PTA, and we're super involved. Like many of you, I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I am never at home. I was teaching a month-long series of the ladies' Bible class here at Broadway in December. Who would have thought a vagabond girl that was too scared to come to church, that wore too short of shorts, would end up teaching the ladies' Bible class here? God had done an amazing work in me. I had finished teaching in December. I ended my lessons by stating that God was enough. Whether in plenty or in want, God was enough. Whether in sickness or in health, God was enough. Whether my children were obedient or disobedient, God was enough. Whether my husband lived or not died, God was enough. I then said, whether my husband was faithful or not, God was enough. That was not in my notes. I do not know why I said that, but I remember it vividly. God had His hand on me and was working on my heart. In January 2005, about 3 weeks after I taught that lesson, the life I thought I had fell apart. Tim sat me down and began weeping. He explained to me that he had been unfaithful to me and to our family. I was broken beyond what I thought was possible. I was hurt in a way that I had never hurt before. It was horrible and painful and gut-wrenching. Everything I thought I had and everything that I thought was true in the most important human relationship in my life felt like a lie. I was in agony. Praise the Lord, He had prepared me and helped me grow deep roots. Exactly what I said in the lesson I had taught 2 weeks before had occurred. My husband had been unfaithful. Was God enough? My words and my faith were put to the test. What was I going to do? I had a 12-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter. Both of my parents were deceased. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I had not worked outside of my house in 12 years. I had a husband who was broken and weeping and begging for my forgiveness. I have never in all of my life felt more utterly alone. I was in anguish. Was God enough? I cried and I cried. I was angry and I was hurt. My heart was broken, and I was so angry with Tim. I just need to wipe my nose. Was God enough? Was he all that I really needed? I remember holding my Bible. I think that's so funny that this memory is so vivid. I don't remember reading my Bible. I remember holding my Bible. I just sat in a chair in our bedroom, and I held the Bible for hours, and I cried and I wept. My whole life felt like a lie. I was so hurt that God had allowed this to enter my life. I thought I'd done everything right. I had studied God's word. I had grown. I had taught my kids about Christ. Why did he let this happen to me? I prayed continually and slowly, very, very slowly. When I quieted down, God reminded me of the truths that he had taught me through his word. I knew God had not left me. God had not betrayed me. God would keep every promise that he had ever made me in his word. He took me to Isaiah. Though the mountains be shaken and the hills be removed, yet my unfailing love for you will not be shaken, nor will my covenant of peace be removed. I claimed the promise in Joshua, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. Be strong and courageous. I read this verse continually. I had it in my car. I had it on my mirror. I carried it in my purse. This verse brought me a lot of peace. I chose to try to forgive Tim and save my marriage. We got sound Christian counseling. We surrounded ourselves with strong, godly people who gave godly advice. We stopped all activities and focused solely on our family. I trusted God. I was so thankful that he had given me deep roots. I believed I would be okay, regardless of how Tim and I fared. God is good, God is faithful, God is true, and God is enough. I chose to forgive Tim, but forgiveness is funny. It's hard. Forgiveness is not a one-time decision. Forgiveness is a day-by-day, hour-by-hour, sometimes minute-by-minute decision. And I had to make it over and over and over and over. God took me to Isaiah 43. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I'm making a way in the desert and streams in the wasteland. God was doing this in our life. We were in the wasteland, and we needed a way out. Through God's grace and Tim's incredible patience with me, I was able to forgive. I know I had a right to be angry and upset with Tim, but he took so much grief from me for such a long time. And at times he still does. I still hurt over him breaking his vow to me, but God did a mighty work. I love my husband. He is such a good man. And he loves me so much. He is good to me. We laugh and we work and we serve together. What Satan wanted to take and wreak havoc and destruction, God took and he brought new life and he brought it to the full. My marriage is better than it's ever been before. Our love is deeper than it ever was before. My children are stronger and have built spiritual muscles that they did not have before. It does not make human sense, but I would not trade the marriage I have now for the one we had before for anything. I hate what happened, but I'm so thankful that God used it for such good in our lives. In Romans 8:28, it says, "And we know in all things God works for the good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose." That verse says in all things, not just the easy things, not just the pretty things, not just the fun things. He says in all things. So whoever would have thought that something so awful and so painful and so ugly could be used to produce something so beautiful? Only by the grace of God and his goodness could this have ever occurred.
January 5th, 2005 was the worst day of my life. It may have been the best day of my life, too. It was on that day that I confessed my sins to Lisa. You see, my pride and arrogance had manifested itself in sins against Lisa and my God. I inflicted the deepest of wounds on my beautiful, faithful, and loving wife. Only when the Lord comes will she be fully healed. We both longed for that day. Lisa was not the only one that I hurt. I also wronged my own children, Tucker and Kaylee, my parents, my family, my friends, and many of you. So began the most painful days, weeks, months, and years of our life. Ironically, so also began some of the best days of our life. God is good. We enlisted the help of a godly marriage coach. We prayed endlessly. One of the best pieces of advice I got was from good old Newell Lovelace. And he told me, Tim, you need to wear out the knees of your jeans because you're going to be on the floor in prayer a lot. And I obeyed Newell. And I did that. We prayed endlessly. Many of you prayed endlessly. We were surrounded by many godly friends and family who sacrificed much for us. I resigned from every commitment I had made except for my commitment to Lisa, my family, and my work. God did amazing things in our marriage over the next few months and years, and He did much of His work through people like you. Don't ever underestimate the power of the church. God knew what He was doing when He instituted the church. Don't get me wrong. All the glory goes to God. And ultimately, it was He who worked the miraculous healing. But He did much of it through people just like you. Your presence is important. In order to build community, you have to be present with the community. It's not about you. It's about others. If not for selfless Christian brothers and sisters, I would not be here today. The following scripture became very important to me. Who is a God like you, who pardons sin and forgives the transgression of the remnant of His inheritance? You do not stay angry forever, but delight to show mercy. You will again have compassion on us. You will tread our sins underfoot and hurl all our iniquities into the depths of the sea. That's Micah 7. There were a lot of songs through the years that have meant a lot to us. One is one we still sing a lot. It says from Psalm 124, had it not been the Lord who was on our side, had it not been the Lord who was on our side, the enemy, the waters would have engulfed us. We would have surely died had it not been the Lord who was on our side. Blessed be the Lord. Another song is a song called The Anchor Holds in the Midst of the Storm. It's a song by Ray Boltz. We listen to that often and clung to that promise that comes loosely from the book of Hebrews that we have an anchor for the soul. I'm going to say a little something about Lisa for a second. She's amazing, obviously. We are never more like God than when we forgive. I have witnessed and been the recipient of this godly woman's amazing grace. Second only to God, all that we've become over the last 11 plus years is due to her. I shudder to think what I would be without her. You see, love and forgiveness are not feelings. They are decisions that must be made every day. She has chosen to love and forgive, even when it didn't feel very good or very right. And she has chosen to love and forgive, even when, And she has quietly ministered to countless ladies over the last few years, offering godly counsel to hurting wives. I think God has used her to not only save this marriage, but a few others as well. In fact, I don't think that, I know that. My children left our home with an extremely solid spiritual foundation. And the reason for that is because of this woman right here. And for those reasons, I will forever be grateful for that. I told you that was the worst day of my life and the best day of my life. How can that be? Secret sin is a merciless albatross, a cruel taskmaster. Sin will take you further than you want to go and cost you more than you want to pay. Don't dabble in it. When it comes to light, though, oh, what a relief. I felt free for the first time in a long time. I could sleep better. Eventually, I could whistle again. I felt immediate healing. From Psalm 32, when I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. For day and night your hand was heavy upon me. My strength was sapped as in the heat of summer. Then I acknowledged my sin to you and did not cover up my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin. Proverbs 3. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. It will be healing to your body and refreshment to your bones. You see, I had become wise in my own eyes, and it led me to a very terrible place. But the Bible is true when it says when you turn from evil, it will be refreshing to your bones, and so it was. The healing took a long time. In fact, it's still happening. It will never be made perfectly right until the Lord comes. Several interesting things happened. First, the enemy showed up. You might have thought that he was already there. Well, let me tell you what I mean by that. You see, I had fallen off of his radar in a way because I was sinning all on my own. But once our sin is exposed and we repent, it really irritates him. So I was bombarded with deep guilt and hopelessness. I just knew I was damned. Although I firmly believed that the blood of Jesus was adequate for everybody else, I began to think that my sin was too big. There was pride still in me. See, the enemy is devious and relentless. It took much prayer, Bible study, and godly counsel to emerge from this despair. I love the song we sing that has a line that goes, no guilt in life, no fear in death. Secondly, I felt a great need to apologize to everyone I hurt. This became exhausting. I could never apologize enough. I then began an exhausting quest to live a perfect life. How do you think that went? Talk about an albatross and a cruel taskmaster. Even inadvertent mistakes became causes for debilitating remorse and despair. These mistakes further made me think I was beyond hope. It was driving Lisa crazy. I learned I could not be perfect. Eventually, I came to accept the grace of God. His grace is much greater than your sin. Jesus' blood is more than adequate, no matter the depth of your depravity. I now try to live a repentant life, not a perfect one.
This is taking longer than it did at home. I know that Carl's going to ask me what I'm most excited about at Broadway, and I'm so excited to talk about it. I'm excited about the Heart to Home ministry, and I'm so thankful to the ladies that started it. 2.5 years ago, Tucker, my son, married Audrey, and they live in Fort Worth, and they attend the Hills Church. Our daughter, KK, married Jeff in August, and they live in Addison, Texas, and they've been attending the Branch Church. My kids are at pivotal points in their lives, learning to live and worship and serve at new congregations. I need the ladies of those churches to reach out and love my girls, to encourage my girls, to hold my girls accountable. This ministry is vital to helping our young ladies and our families. I am so thankful that we have it here at Broadway, and I pray that God uses it mightily in the lives of all the women that are involved. We need to foster and to encourage these relationships that this ministry helps cultivate. We need each other. And I don't know what you are all facing. I don't know what roads you've walked. but I do know what a mighty God we serve. I know He is faithful and true and loving and kind and good. I know He can take the deepest heartache and use it for good. I know He will never leave or forsake His people. I know that He loves me, and I know that He loves you too. Trust Him, love Him, serve Him, forgive freely again and again. God is enough.
So what now? Lisa and I find ourselves at a point in time where we can pour our lives into others. We don't do it perfectly, by the way, and at times it's frustrating and exhausting. But how can we not do that? We have been the recipients of God's healing touch through the hands of His church. Who knows but that He will use us to help heal some of you. I want to close with a passage from Philippians chapter 3. Brothers, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. Thank you all.
Yeah,
You want to read?
I have one more thing that should I read it or just tell them I have it? I'm going to read it real quick. This was, it helped me considerably, and I don't know if anybody needs it, but I made copies in case anybody wants it. Some of life's greatest roadblocks are not the ones we see in the windshield. They are instead the roadblocks that seem to fill our rearview mirror. Sometimes, because we're imperfect human beings, we find it difficult to accept the past. We simply can't let go of our pain, so we relive it with predictably unfortunate consequences. Of course, no amount of anger or bitterness can change what happened yesterday. Tears can't change the past. Regrets can't change it. Our worries won't change the past, and neither will our complaints. Simply put, the past is and will always be the past, forever. Can you summon the courage and the wisdom to accept the past and move on with your life? Hopefully you can. Then you can fully engage yourself in the present, and by doing so, build a better future for yourself and your loved ones. So if you've endured a difficult past, accept it, learn from it, but don't spend too much time there. Instead, trust God's plan for your life and look to the future for God's blessings. He intends to use you in wonderful, unexpected ways if you'll let Him. The decision to seek God's plan and look to the future is an important decision, and it's the right thing to do. Don't let bitterness or any other sin get in the way. And then it says, leave the broken, irreversible past in God's hands and step out in the invincible future with Him. And that's by Oswald Chambers.
All right, Tim, Lisa answered my question because she knew I was going to ask her. So I get to ask you, what are you excited about as you look toward the future with Broadway, being through what you've been through, knowing where you've been?
So several of the guys have already talked about, the great excitement we have in thinking that we have a great mission opportunity down the street, and I certainly agree with that. But I'll go a different direction since that's already been spoken. I really feel strongly that intergenerational relationship is really crucial for a variety of reasons. One is it strengthens our body. And I'm looking forward to us really doing a better job of intergenerational ministry here at Broadway, and the wheels are turning on that. An interesting thing, I will say something. Did you know that us elders, a lot of times we don't have a clue how to do stuff?
Yeah, we know that.
And so, but the beauty of this talented church family is we know you guys do. And so, when we talk about, hey, let's do intergenerational ministry better, we don't know how to do it, but we know you guys do. And so we're looking forward to seeing how that'll happen. But I think the end result of that is going to be that when our kids leave this place, they're going to have a faith that's going to last until the day they die. And we as elders truly want that to happen with these little guys that are growing up. That when they leave here, their faith is secure until the day they die. And I think an important part of that is kind of what we're doing tonight. We've got people in here from age little, 3, up to, I don't know, 80s or so, maybe. That's beautiful. And the church, I'm just excited about that intergenerational component of what I think is going to be happening.
Can we thank these guys one more time? Tim and Lisa have been our flock elders. And so we've gotten to spend a lot of time with them. They have prayed over us. They have challenged us and encouraged us. I know many of you have felt that same love and blessing for them, so we are definitely thankful. You just heard a small swath of their story. So much. God has used them in such powerful ways. And I know we could pass the mic around in here and just hear about ways that you've been blessed by them. But I just encourage you afterwards, if you would, come and encourage them and just give them a hug and tell them how much we love them. And let me close with some word of prayer. We'll be done. Father, what an amazing story. A story of faithfulness. A story of hopes and fears, of highs and lows. Stories where, in great faith and with great courage, facing insurmountable odds. And yet, there is a God. A God who is faithful and who is sturdy and who can handle anything. A God who knows how to weave into a beautiful fabric even the hardest moments of our life. And God, we struggle to understand how you do it. And yet you do it time and time again. And Father, we're reminded of the significance of community, of being together. And Lord, we hear that so loudly tonight. We're so thankful that you have brought Tim and Lisa to us. And that you have woven their story into your story here at Broadway. And because we are a part of this place, God, you are weaving ours with them. And so, God, may we be encouraged and challenged to live more fully as disciples of Jesus Christ, whom Tim and Lisa follow without reservation, with great hope, with great courage. God, I'm so thankful for them, for what they mean to me, to my family, but God, even more what they mean to you. Father, I pray that they would know in a deep place how you have used them already before now, but especially tonight and moving forward, you continue to use them in their story. God, thank you for their love for you and their love for us. And God, we ask your blessing on them in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Thanks, everybody.